Like most roguelites, Returnal's fun is found in developing skills through failure, with each run teaching you something new that you can use for the next one. If you're finding the opening hours especially challenging, here are 11 tips that will help you get up to speed with Returnal's pace and explain some of its more obscure mechanics to save you some time. Don't stop moving. House Marquee is departing from its traditional 2D arcade shooter roots with Returnal, but that doesn't mean it hasn't brought with it the same fundamental gameplay pillars. One of those is the bombardment of projectiles and enemies you'll have to deal with, making any time you remain stationary progressively more dangerous. Returnal's combat arenas are designed to feel cramped purposefully, but each one offers nooks and crannies for you to exploit, allowing you to create space and distance from foes. Better yet, consistently moving around forces enemies to break formation and find different ways to get to you, creating better chances for you to pick them off individually. As your arsenal of gadgets grows, your ability to move around a space expands too. The grappling hook, which you only unlock a few hours in, is a great example of this, letting you string together life-saving swings and dexterous dodges to get out of even the hairiest situations. But when push comes to shove, making sure you're comfortable with the ridiculous speed of Celine's sprint will go a long way toward ensuring your survival. As long as you're moving as much as you're shooting, you'll be fine. Aiming down sights has benefits. With a focus on movement, it might seem redundant for Returnal even to include an option to aim down the sights of your weapon. It slows you down and forces you to be precise at the expense of a more narrow field of view that could mean missing some incoming projectiles. It's tempting then to just never use ADS and rely on the accuracy of hipfire, but then you'll be missing out on exploiting weak spots on enemies. This is especially important for both boss-like enemies, each of which generally features a weak point that can only be seen when aiming down the sights. It also helps you focus your fire on these points, which can be crucial for both slow-firing weapons and ones with small magazine sizes. Pay attention to your active reload. Like Gears of War, Returnal features an active reload system that can help you reload your weapons faster with the right timing. Each weapon and variation features its own timing and active reload window, which can be a bit confusing to get into a rhythm with at first. But your perseverance will be rewarded, as in a chaotic fight, the difference between life and death can be the second or two wasted on a mistimed or missed active reload, especially with weapons that need to be reloaded with every shot. Focus on the bar in your crosshair and adjust to the dynamic timing window with every new weapon you pick up. You will be rewarded for it. High-tier weapons aren't always the best choice. Weapons you find in Returnal are governed by weapon proficiency, a bar you gradually fill up during each run that determines the tier of weapons you'll find. It might be tempting to just focus on the overall weapon level and swap for anything higher than what you have, but as runs start becoming longer and enemies introduce more complex attack patterns, having a weapon that you're comfortable with is often more deadly than one with a higher level. Avoid damage as much as possible. This might seem like a no-brainer for a shooter. Getting hit less means less death, so of course you're going to avoid it. Thing is, shooters make us accustomed to taking some hits to deal out a few, often with systems that lean towards rewarding you even if you're careless. Returnal isn't like that at all, and that's evident in its adrenaline mechanic. Your adrenaline multiplier increases with every few enemies you kill without taking damage, going up to a maximum level of 5. Each level comes with its own perks, such as the ability to detect enemies through walls, a more powerful melee attack, and even more currency rewards on kills. Take damage, however, and that gets reset down to 0. It's worth prioritizing your adrenaline meter since there are upgrades that give you added benefits from adrenalinum, such as healing. Dash into danger, not away from it. One of the skills you start with is an incredibly useful dash that you can pull off pretty much anywhere. But unlike many action games, Returnal expects you to use it to go towards projectiles, not necessarily away from them. While dashing, you are invincible to attacks, letting you use it to bypass a wall of projectiles while also closing the gap to an enemy for a devastating melee kill. Your dodge is also used for some light puzzle solving, as many optional rooms will be brimming with lasers and other hazards that you will need to deftly dodge through to escape. Things change later in the run where certain attacks, denoted by their purple color, will not allow you to dash through them safely. This can be slightly jarring after hours of muscle memory telling you that it's totally doable, but just be warned of the sudden shift. Don't forget your powerful melee. Speaking of melee, once you've managed to get far enough into Returnal's first biome, you'll be rewarded with a permanent melee attack, which you should incorporate into your attacks as much as you can. Not only does it just look phenomenal when you slice an enemy just right, but your melee is consistently one of the most powerful attacks in the game. Most enemies, outside of bosses, will die with one slash if at half or less health. As you pump up your adrenaline level, your melee will become even more powerful, letting you clear whole groups of enemies at a time. It can be easy to forget about when you're more preoccupied with returning projectiles at enemies, but ignoring melee will make Returnal's action harder to cope with as it becomes more frantic. Always search for health and resin. One mechanic Returnal doesn't immediately make clear is the intrinsic link between health pickups and your ability to increase your total health pool. Health pickups differ between resin and vials. The former contributes to a bar aside your health that, when filled, will increase your total slightly, while the latter simply heals any missing health. What isn't explained is that if you're at full health, all vials on the map act like resin, meaning they contribute to growing your health total too. You can sprint through new combat arenas trying to gather all these pickups before potentially taking damage to enemies, but that also leaves you with nothing to heal up with after a battle. Conversely, you can ignore them until after a fight, but you could find yourself getting later and later into a run without an adequate health total to draw from. Either way, it's good to remember not to ignore these pickups entirely, even if you're fully topped up. Don't use items immediately as you find them. On that note, though, don't feel compelled to make these decisions as they are presented to you, which goes double for any items, fabrication stations, and more you find in each biome. Returnal has each of its biomes littered with fast travel points, encouraging you to go back to areas you might have left items in to reap their rewards later. For example, consumables you had no space for can still be picked up well after you've left the room you found them in. Returnal's great map makes it easy to recall where points of interest are, so don't get too caught up in forward progression and instead take a moment to take stock, backtrack a little, and ensure you have everything possible before moving on. Skipping biomes is totally viable. Once you unlock a new biome, it can be deflating to die early on into it and be greeted with the sting of restarting your run. The good news is that, once unlocked, the path to a new biome is usually presented early into a new run, letting you skip right to it. Each biome also features a weapon proficiency upgrade at the start to bring you right up to what is required for the enemies ahead of you, but you'll still need to find a weapon on that level to be fully up to speed. That said, farming is important too. So while it might be tempting to immediately jump back to where you died, the reality is that you're making things more difficult for yourself that way. Each death resets you basically back to zero, with only your total inventory slots for consumables staying intact. That means suit upgrades, total health, parasites all get reset, which can make instant jumps in biomes a daunting prospect. There's value in getting familiar with the starting biome and using your refined skills to upgrade as much as possible without taking damage, and only then jumping back to where you last died. Better still, you don't need to fight each biome's boss again, but learning how to dispatch them quickly comes with its own rewards too. We hope these beginner tips help you out on your journey. If you have any tips, we invite you to share them in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you later.